Hello there, Outposters, and welcome for a special Eggy and Yoda talks about something that they talk about something that they love, and for once, we're going to continue talking about something that we love instead of crapping on the new stuff that's coming afterwards, as we did with Star Trek. We're going to talk about Alex Ross and Mark Waid's fantastic uh, graphic novel called Kingdom Come. Now, Matt, this came out in 1996, I believe,
Yes, it did.
and it's a gosh, it just passed its 25-year anniversary, didn't it? Would have been
Yeah.
2021. We missed that. So tell me, what do you tell me about how you found this, and when? I mean, did you read it back then? Because I did. I know if you found it later, or how did you discover it, and what was your initial thoughts on it?
Well, as you know, I grew up with Superman, and but at the age of when this came out, I was 22. So comics were far from my point of focus. Obviously, it was beers and drinks and football and everything else. And then I don't exactly know what I saw, but I saw an illustration from the comic by Alex Ross of Superman, and I was just totally blown away because it was so different from the comic book stuff that we'd seen previously. And then I just purposely sought it out. I went down to my local comic book shop, explained what I'd seen, said about an artist called Alex Ross, and the bloke dug out Kingdom Come. And it was literally that comic that made me fall back in love with comics all over again. I was blown away by it.
I don't blame you. I mean, when you see a piece of art like that, it's it was a revelation to me because I had never heard of Alex Ross either.
No.
And I think I was the same way. I think I saw this somewhere, or somebody had done something on the internet, some picture, and I don't know if it was a specific one. It's just the first one I found here, but of Superman, and it's so majestic. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I was pretty astounded when I found out. Oh, no, this isn't just the cover art. This is the entire effing comic.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah, that was it.
So then I got into it. Say, okay, well, beautiful is one thing, but is the story any good? And what the story is basically grafted onto the Book of Revelations in the Bible, and it does so fairly well. So this is grafted onto the Book of Revelations, and it starts out with the Sandman, who now I had a reprint from when I was a kid. In fact, I still have it, of All Star Comics #1, I think, or
Wow.
very early. It was at one of those. You remember when they do those giant size ones? They were like almost legal paper. I mean, they were huge, like 3 times as big as an average comic. And I'd gotten that. I'd gotten Whiz Comics #1. My aunt had probably found them in some store. They were just reprints. They weren't, they're not worth anything, but they were fully realized reprints. But it was a Superman, a Whiz Comics, an All Star, and I want to say there was a fourth one, maybe not. I don't remember what it was. Oh, I know what it was. It was a Dick Tracy.
Oh, okay.
So stuff from like the 30s and 40s, right? And I still have most of them. They're in pretty sorry shape, but
So wait.
but I just poured over them at the time, and I remember the JSA one had, or the All Star Comics was the first meeting of the JSA. The JSA included the Atom, which was not the Atom that the guy who could shrink, but a guy with kind of this yellow shirt and beige briefs, and then he wore this really bright blue hood and cape.
Okay.
Very, very striking, and he was just a small guy who was built like like a fire plug who fought crime. He didn't have any powers or nothing. That's who he was. And then you had Green Lantern, who was the Alan Scott version.
Yeah.
And that was the fun days when, that they would have random weaknesses that made no sense at all, but they had them. It's like I can construct anything with my ring. Oh no, it's made of wood. I can't do anything if something's made of wood.
This week.
Why wood? Because and then they had the Flash, who it was Jay Garrick, and he had the Mercury helmet. He looked like the FTD man. And they had Hawkman, who I think was Carter Hall. He wasn't a Thanagarian. I think it was those ones where he's reincarnated, but they didn't even go into that very much. So I'm not sure how he got his powers. You had the Spectre, and you had Johnny Storm, who could call on the genie, Thunderbolt.
Not Johnny Storm from Fantastic Four, obviously.
No. His name was, I think that's his name, Johnny Storm, but it was Johnny something, and he could get the Thunderbolt by saying the words CEI space U.
Okay.
And if you sound it out, it sounds like the words SAYYOU, say you.
Okay.
So, and in the 30s, that was kind of a common way. Say, you'd think those guys would bring me along on there, and then the Thunderbolt would come and grant a wish. He had no idea why this was happening, because he couldn't figure out what was the magic words that did it. So, but because this was a common idiom in the 30s, he would get these things.
Nice.
And finally, we come across Sandman. And the Sandman was Wesley Dodds, and he put on a gas mask and then a fedora and a trench coat and everything. It was kind of a good look. And he had his rape gun. I mean, his sleeping gun. That was his big weapon. He would come in with his gun, and he'd fire it, and his gas would come out, and they'd all fall asleep. It would come lazily out, they'd all fall asleep. But that's how he fought crime, man. So
he's like an early Bill Cosby.
Yeah. Except he used his powers for good, sir. So I told you all that to tell you this. So Sandman is now old in the Kingdom Come. And all the JSA guys are very old, and they're not really brought into Kingdom Come, except for this Wesley Dodds, who's on his deathbed, and he's talking to this preacher. And the preacher is, what's his name?
Norman
McKay, right?
Yeah.
And Norman is listening to, he I guess Wesley is one of his parishioners and has become a bit of a friend with him. And here we go. So Wesley is having all these crazy kinds of visions. Now this is taking place. So let's take another step back, because I'm kind of steeped in DC lore. So, and please feel free to jump in anytime.
No, go on, you go.
So you had the Golden Age, which was from basically the birth of Superman, 1938, through the 50s-ish. And a lot of people will say it was about the time when they started reintroducing. I talked about the Flash, I talked about Green Lantern, I talked about the Atom. They reintroduced all these guys, but they gave them they were completely new characters. So they introduced Green Lantern, but now it was Hal Jordan. He was part of Space Cops. It was more science-based.
Yeah.
In the 50s, they went from mystical to more science fiction stuff. I think it was maybe partly because of the atom bomb, and people were tired of the old.
Yeah.
I mean, they've been going for 15 years or more. Superman, Batman, and Wonder Woman continued on. They did fine. But all the rest of them, the JSA and all those, they had all been shelved or discontinued. And so there was a renaissance, and you had the Flash, which was Barry Allen. You had Hal Jordan as the Green Lantern. You had the Atom, which was Ray Palmer. And his thing was that he could actually shrink, and he had scientific stuff. It was all science.
Yes.
If you call getting struck by lightning and a pile of chemicals falling on you science, then and then I don't think any of the Spectre, some of these guys kind of came back into focus, but for other reasons. Like the Spectre was kind of this magical thing. He wasn't very well defined, I don't think, back then. Just a ghost that had been reanimated to fight crime from a particular a cop that had been wrongly killed.
That's right.
And then later on, he became the basically the embodiment of God's vengeance.
Yeah.
And I always thought it was cool that DC would put in a lot of biblical allegories. Like they didn't. The DC universe, God exists.
Yeah.
He never shows up, really, but he does exist. And so then you start having things like Eclipso, who started out as God's Wrath, but he effed it up. So then Spectre took over and became God's Wrath. And then there's others that are parts of God. And it's very weird and symbolic and all that kind of stuff, which is interesting to me. I think it's great.
Yeah.
So then you get to the 50s, you're in the Silver Age. Then somewhere in the late 60s, you have what they call the Bronze Age. The continuity hasn't changed, but the heroes start getting a little darker. Batman starts becoming more of what we think of as Batman, as a dark crusader rather than fun guy and getting changed into a zebra or melted colors or half Superman, half Batman. I mean, it's just like all those weird things. I mean, they're fun, but they are goofy as hell in the 50s. And when they get past the Silver Age, they start getting into a little bit more realism. Superman starts having more realistic conflicts, and Clark Kent gets moved from Daily Planet to an anchor at GBS, which that always struck me as weird because it's like if you're trying to keep a secret identity, being a TV personality is probably not a good idea.
Yeah, the whole point of him being a reporter is that he could just disappear.
I just get the feel like I just got the impression like he'd have on the glasses, he'd be reading the news, and then you know how they put the square up there and he's doing a story on Superman. Superman is right there next to him. And he's like, today in the news, Superman. People are like, oh.
Hold on a minute.
Wait a second. Just a bad idea, but fine. So finally, continuity from the 30s through the 80s is an absolute mess. They have introduced Earth 2, which is supposedly the Superman from the 30s, the Batman from the 30s, and the Wonder Woman from the 30s. And they're all older now because they started years ago. And the Superman that we know now is Earth 1, the Batman of Earth 1. That continuity with the JSA and everything is considered Earth 2. And that's where you get Power Girl and a lot of kids. That's where you get Huntress for the first time. She's actually Batman's kid, all that kind of stuff. Then they buy the Wiz comics, which had Shazam and all the characters that came from that. Although they didn't do that much with the other characters. But that's Earth S. And then you have Earth 3, which is the Crime Syndicate, which is kind of like an evil version of the Justice League. But it's not like Superman. It's like Ultraman and Superwoman and I don't know, Green something. I forget what they called it.
Yeah, I can't remember.
And Johnny Quick or something. Or just they have the same powers, but they're completely different people, and they're all evil. And Lex Luthor is good in that world.
That's it.
And then you have Earth 4. Which is Charleston Comics, or maybe that was Earth C. And they bought, that's where Blue Beetle and Peacemaker and several others, Captain Atom, they had all come from that. And they had bought those in the early 80s. And that's where, if you look at Watchmen, those characters are based on those that they bought. He was going to make Watchmen out of the Blue Beetle and all that kind of stuff. But DC was like, look, we just bought these guys. We probably want to use them. Why do the story, but make up new characters?
Yeah.
So but if you look at them, they're very loosely based on, or they're very clearly based on those characters from the Charleston comics. You can find they're almost 1-to-1. Like Owlman is Blue Beetle, Ted Cord. And,
Oh, okay.
Captain Atom would be the blue guy,
Dr. Manhattan.
Dr. Manhattan, right?
Yeah.
So, and then you have Earth 4. I think is a world where the Nazis take over, and you have Uncle Sam and the Freedom Fighters. I mean, you can see this is getting more and more convoluted, right?
Yeah.
And these are just the worlds that actually have comics that went with them for some brief period of time. That doesn't include all the ones that they just created for some damn story somewhere. And so in 1985, he said, F this. And I think it was probably the biggest change in all of comics. And I think even Marvel was affected by this a little bit. Because Marvel, I noticed that around the same time, their art got different. They started having, like the X-Men started having more subtle conversations around the mansion about things that didn't matter, rather than more of those in-your-face conversations that they had, and which was always, they were always in costume, and they were always seemed like they were yelling, and and they were good stories. Don't get me wrong, but there was a change in tone that happened, and I believe a lot of this came from the Crisis on Infinite Earths in 1985. The Crisis on Infinite Earths was pretty much the ending of the Silver Age. And the Kurt Swan style of Superman and all that kind of stuff. They rebooted Superman, they rebooted Wonder Woman, and they brought all the Earths into one. Now that was so successful that DC is continuing doing Crises every other year.
Yeah.
Which is really terrible.
Yep.
But that was the beginning of a continuity that I think was, quite frankly, their best years. From 85 to about 2011, I think they did their best work.
Okay.
They certainly cribbed and did a lot of things from the early ages, but they rethought them. It's kind of like what Batman the Animated Series did with Mr. Freeze. He was a joke until Batman the Animated Series came along, and then they did such a good job with them that that's what we think of as Mr. Freeze. They did a lot of that with a lot of the Silver Age stuff, and you had really interesting ideas. Like, I like Jeff Johns turning the Green Lanterns into an emotion, like greed is willpower.
Yeah, brilliant.
And so from that, yellow became fear, orange became greed, pink or indigo became love, and indigo became, I don't know, hope or something, or maybe that was blue. Point is, they had the whole spectrum of light, and it wasn't
red was anger. Was red anger?
Red was rage, yeah.
Rage, yeah, there you go.
And so, and they would have these wars between the different, and some would be on the good side, some would be on the bad side. It was all based on negative emotions and all that kind of stuff. So that kind of stuff is really interesting to me, and they've thrown that all in the dumpster in favor of, well, they did the New 52, and then they did some other things. Okay, so 85, the Crisis happens, and that is, in my mind, where the Kingdom Come continuity comes from. It's 10 years. It's 10 years after the Crisis, or at least in real world terms, because the Crisis happened in 85. This came out in 96, and it's set about 15 or 20 years after what we consider the present. So if this was happening in 96, let's say this is happening in 2016. And time in the comics has moved on for 20 years. So Superman's quite a bit older. Batman's quite a bit older, and he's kind of broken.
Yep.
And I don't mean broken like in spirit, but his body.
Yeah, his body's gone.
Yeah, he's wearing a big exosuit.
Exosuit,
kind of like what Rhodey got for his legs, but for his entire body. And Wonder Woman still looks like Wonder Woman because she's ageless, but she's definitely harder now.
Yeah,
and she feels like she's failed, and she's embracing more of the Amazon warrior tenet. And all this stemmed from the fact that in the past, or in what we would call the present time now, when they're all still young, they're all still at their, doing their thing. Joker flips his lid more than usual. He goes into the Daily Planet and he kills everybody in there, including Lois Lane, Perry White, Jimmy Olsen. And there's a new guy named Magog. And Magog, he kind of looks like, I don't know, like almost like a gladiator or something. I don't know. He's
gold. Weird, isn't it? Yeah. Who's the bloke from X-Men with the? He's got all the silver ridges.
A little bit like Colossus, but he isn't covering his entire body.
No, he's got horns and.
Yeah. Let me see if I can find a decent.
Hey, look, I'll tell you what. I've got my comic here. I can flick through it and I'll tell you what page you need to get to.
I'm sure I can find him here. I know he was in the first or second issue. But the point is that he's a guy that's willing to kill, right?
Yep.
He's a guy that's willing to say, I will do whatever has to be done.
I found him on page 94, if that helps.
It doesn't, but that's okay.
Oh.
I think I found it here. So, this is Magog right here. And he decides to kill the Joker outside the courthouse steps, and the public supports him.
Yeah.
And what's interesting about this, what I find interesting about all this, is that it feels like that some of the things that are happening today, where we rule by emotion, is what happened in that time. That the public were really emotional about what happened with the Joker, and not understanding that once you start down these roads of removing due process, removing these bigger things, is the loss of Joker a big problem in and of itself? Not really. He's a piece of shit, and there are arguments to be made that if he keeps getting out and you didn't put him down, then he would do more damage.
Yeah.
I understand that logic, but there's a much longer term, and that's what this story tries to reflect. There's a much longer term problem with simply taking justice into your own hands and not understanding the broader scheme of what justice is really all about. Not social justice, not oppression, but what is really justice? Justice is about balancing the scales.
Yeah.
Justice is about having due process and righting the wrong that happened so that we're balanced. You can't, it's not about undoing what has happened. You can't do that. But justice is just about restoring a balance. Man does a bad thing, man gets punished for a bad thing. And he does it through an agreed upon set of rules that were in place beforehand. And when you arbitrarily destroy those rules, you open up the floodgates for everybody to destroy those rules. Superman wouldn't change. Superman would not. I think the most interesting line in this is that Superman's greatest weakness is not kryptonite. It's his inability to see himself as the inspiration that he is. I always thought that line always stuck with me. So when he left, that was his, because he wouldn't change and he wouldn't be this person. He also kind of ran away and didn't understand what he was leaving behind him. And without his moral compass guiding the rest of the heroes, who then over the course of time had kids, had other heroes came about, and there was and the original Justice League, the Green Lantern, the Batman, the Wonder Woman, the Flash, they all kind of went their separate ways and kind of did their own thing and stayed out of the limelight. Now, Bruce got found out that he was Batman some years before. The mansion was destroyed. He pretty much lives in the Batcave. His body is broken, but he's built up an army of bat robots that keep Gotham in check. But the rest of the world is just a mess. And the supervillains of old, they're pretty much gone. There's a few, but they ain't really causing trouble. And now it's just factions of do-gooders fighting each other.
Yeah.
Now, I look at that today, right? And I see how what once was like feminists were once fighting for women's rights, but now they're on the outs because they are TERFs. And so these groups who believe that they are the correct ones are fighting the groups that also believe they're the correct ones. And so they just go after each other, and there's all kinds of damage happening. Not physical damage like they show in the comic, but there is all kinds of damage happening to society and culture in general, because these two groups aren't thinking about the bigger picture. They aren't thinking about how you're supposed to, why these rules were in place in the first place, why we don't just fight each other to fight each other, why we need to not be so arrogant in our beliefs of our soul righteousness, you know? Mm. And that's why I thought that this book was interesting for the time, for what is happening today, because I look at the power that we now wield with information and how willing we are to use it and hurt people, or not, at least not think of the consequences of how we wield this information. So we find some old tweet and we destroy a guy's life.
Yep.
We dox people where other people come in and physically harm them. Right? Mm-hmm. We use the internet and we use anonymity to swat people, send cops as a joke, and think that there's no consequences to these kinds of things. And there's a lot of, the ends don't justify the means allegories in this, but I think it goes a lot deeper than that about how society is ripped apart because we have people that believe they are above us.
Yeah. Moral grandstanding.
Yeah. And that's what this book was all about, was all these heroes with all these powers believe that they are above the regular population. And the normies are out there just basically ducking rubble all the time.
Yep.
Which I think there is a case to say that we all feel like that sometimes. So the inciting incident is, I know I'm getting really long-winded here. And
no, you're on, man.
The inciting incident is that Magog leads a group of heroes to go get the parasite. The parasite looks like he's just a mess,
Yeah.
Looks like there's nothing left to him. He's just a disaster. And it's somewhere in Kansas he does this. And he accidentally tears open Captain Adams' protective whatever. Captain Adams basically a flying nuclear bomb, that's what he is.
Pretty much. And I think at this stage as well, Parasite, this is the whole point, is that Parasite was practically beaten at this point, but because there's no one to draw the moral line and say enough is enough, and these superheroes are now just let off the reins with Superman's self-imposed exile, they don't know when enough is enough, and they just keep going. And obviously what happens next is because there's no one there to rein it in. Right. So Captain Atom explodes, which is basically a very large nuclear bomb that destroys Kansas, which really sucked for me because that's where I live. So aside from the loss of life, which is horrific, there's also the irradiation of America's breadbasket. It's where all our food comes from. Yeah. And it's not all Kansas, but Kansas grows a pile of food for this country. And so that's what gets Superman to come out of his self-imposed exile. And he comes back like on high, and he brings the Justice League back together. And for a while, it's getting better.
he's getting the factions to come to his side. But there's a lot that won't. And as time goes on, we see at one point they find Magog, who they know created all this. Magog's still alive, and he's trying to put some things back together in Kansas. But in essence, Magog is the first one that learns the error of his ways. Mm-hmm. Because he just feels nothing but blood and screams of death on his conscience. All the dead from the Kansas thing. He knows that he did that. He knows that he did that the minute he shot Joker 20 years ago.
Yeah.
And he is ultimately very repentant, but he's just broken. Good he learned the lesson, but, obviously a little too late. So Superman and Wonder Woman, they are putting together this thing. Batman doesn't want to have anything to do with it.
No.
He thinks this is a bad idea. Batman represents humanity, where Superman and Wonder Woman represents the gods among us. And so it keeps going to a head. Meanwhile, you have the chaotic among us, the self-serving among us, wanting to take advantage of these things. This is Lex Luthor, who has Captain Marvel in thrall. And I'm saying that on purpose.
Yep.
And he is using it to just enrich himself. To me, this is today's corporate politician, corporate, the media, all these people who could care, who will say the right things, but really could care less about this stuff. He calls it the Mankind Liberation Front, right?
Yeah. LMF. Is it LMF? Yeah.
MLF, yes. And he's saying the right things to try to free humanity from the oppressive gods and Superman and all that, but he didn't care about any of that shit. He just wants to make himself rich. He just wants power.
Yeah, basically he's like the mainstream media. They're sitting there rubbing their hands together at all this carnage unfolding because they know it's building their profile and building their money.
He's absolutely representative of what I would call the elite class today.
Yeah.
The establishment, who say all the right things in front of, what was it? Sam Bankman-Fried, he said, we have to say all this woke shibboleth to, keep the normies in line or something along those lines so we can keep taking their money. They're phony. He's phony. He's full of shit. And people like Captain Marvel, who he has in thrall with some sort of chemical mind control. Well, what do you call social media now, right?
Yeah, exactly.
What do you call Facebook and all that kind of stuff? Billy is a blank-faced, smiling cultist almost, just doing whatever Luthor wants him to do. What's that?
He's an adult human as well. He's not actually Shazam. He's
not actually Shazam.
Captain
That's
Marvel.
the big thing. Everybody is frightened to death of him because they think he's Captain Marvel, but he's not.
No.
He's still Billy Batson. He's just grown up Billy Batson. He looks like he would.
Yeah, exactly.
So you got that faction going. You got Batman, who really does believe in humanity needs to take control of its own destiny, but doesn't know how to deal with this in the face of Superman and the gods. Superman and the gods are well-meaning, but they don't understand what the normal person just trying to get with their lives, what kind of fear they have of this mess. Well, when you say somebody that just gets on Twitter and he tweets something, and next thing you know, like a couple of guys make a joke about a USB dongle and some Karen takes a picture of them, next thing you know, their lives are ruined. That's the kind of power we're wielding here. Again, this is all allegorical, and I know leftists like to take everything literal, they have nothing below the surface, so they don't understand the symbolism here. This isn't about guys throwing buildings at each other, but it's about wielding power to hurt lives. And you don't have to cut somebody, bleed someone, break their bones, or kill them to hurt their lives. So I've been talking a while here. I mean, I want to make sure you're getting some words in edgewise.
No, no. I'm just enjoying a different take on it because there's not many people I know that have actually read it as in depth as I have, or you clearly have, much more than me by the sound of things. So, I'm happy to chip in when you want, but
I
quite
just
nice
want to make
to
sure
see you
you're
listening to something. Yeah, it's not.
I never thought it was that interesting, but that's great. I appreciate it.
No,
So,
it's great. I think the big takeaway, obviously, is the fact that these young superheroes have never had a guiding light, like Superman, because he's been in exile for 10 years.
yeah.
Or Wonder Woman, because she's been expelled from is it Themyscira? I can never say it.
Themyscira.
That's it. Batman is obviously now concentrating on Gotham in his own thing. And
He's the most grounded. Batman is definitely the most grounded.
Yes. So these kids are out and they're literally having turf wars.
Yeah.
Against her.
And I mean, this reminds me. They remind me of the cultists, the self-righteous cultists who are so willing to scream racist or use. That's a powerful word. Let's face it.
Yep.
It's losing its power because it's been so overword, but it is a powerful word. And when you use words like that against people that you know are not necessarily that way, or just because you want power, these kids don't have any understanding of what was built before them and why we had protests. Like when you had protests in the 60s, they were powerful because all other avenues have been used and failed.
Yep.
Legal avenues, those kinds of things. They needed to change the culture. They understood the issues that they were going on, and they understood the foundations of the Constitution and due process. So when they got to the point of protesting, those protests worked very powerfully.
Yeah.
These kids today, they use protests like a weapon without understanding anything of what they're protesting about. Most of it is just about, look at me, I want to be seen, I want to be heard, so I glue myself to the ground, or I throw paint on a picture, and none of it has any foundations of principles.
Or repercussions. That's half the problem. There's no repercussions.
Well, and we don't, and because the people that the establishment is in it for the enrichment, they are using these kids who are trying to feel power but don't want to do the work in understanding what they may. Maybe there should be a protest, but protests have been used so badly that they've just become another weapon that is causing a lot of collateral damage. People can't get to work, priceless paintings are being destroyed, milk that somebody worked for and paid for is getting thrown out onto the ground. And none of it means anything. None of it actually does anything except create destruction and damage. That's what these kids in Kingdom Come are doing. These superhero kids, I guess you could say. They're just creating nothing but damage and destruction for some self-righteous cause they don't understand, and they don't understand the concept of justice or why it is the way it is.
No, I think you could, if you was to try and explain it to someone who's not familiar with the comic, is imagine superpowered BLM, Antifa, and I suppose Proud Boys.
Yeah, a little bit.
Having a constant battle in the streets over trivial things and not caring what anyone else thinks because they're so hell bent on that their point of view is correct that they're willing to enforce any actions necessary to get that point across, just to get the upper hand. There's no reasoning, and I think that's the way you probably look at this by today's standards.
The weird thing is that Superman has the correct philosophy, but he is also stuck in his own way of believing that he is so correct that he's willing to do whatever, that he's fallen into the same trap. Yeah. Him and the Justice League have fallen into the same trap where he's trying to protect the innocent is the only big difference for him. There are many, many pages of him trying to limit collateral damage and everything, but the collateral damage is happening because of him as well.
Well, what did you call it? Magog, yeah? Magog. So, yeah, I'll say it differently. I'll call you Magog. But anyway, when
I don't know how it's pronounced. That's just...
I have no idea, mate. English and American, you've got difference. But there's one particular scene where Superman and Magog, whatever, they meet each other and Magog shoots Superman with his beams and Superman stands there and then Magog is completely in despair of what's happened. And he actually says to Superman, "Damn you," the world changed and you refused to change with it.
Yep.
And I thought that was that's a nice, because it's true. Superman did refuse to change with the going time. He was still, yes, it's along here somewhere.
Your fault, you bastard. The world changed, but you wouldn't. So they chose me. They chose the man that would kill over the man who wouldn't. And now they're dead. I mean, it's powerful stuff.
Oh, very powerful stuff.
And it's so it keeps going on. And there are people who will fall in line with Superman, although he's beginning to look more and more like a dictator.
Yep.
He doesn't want to be. He's not trying to be, but that is what is naturally occurring.
Yeah.
And there's others who will not fall in line with him. And so they build this big gulag, which looks like the Legion of Doom from the old cartoon.
Yeah.
There's one thing I wish DC would stop is bringing back the imagery from the Super Friends cartoon. It's not that big a deal.
Yeah, I know. There you go.
It's on my nerves. But the point is that they make this big prison, and they're trying to rehabilitate these people in the prison. Some people like McGock are just there like, I'm fine, I should be here.
Yeah.
But a lot of them are really pissed off. And
finally, some of them are there. Sorry, Yoda. Some of them are there because they think they're doing the right thing, but because they're not falling in line with Superman's philosophy,
exactly,
he's put them in it. And then you've obviously got the bad ones who were just refusing to fall in with any philosophy. They're in there as well. So this is literally now approaching a boiling point.
It reaches a boiling point, and now you've taken the world's population of superpowered beings and you've put them in one place, which happens to be Kansas again. Well, I mean, it makes sense. You put it there, then because it's already
it's a wasteland.
Yeah, exactly. It's a wasteland, so just put them there. And they're trying to get rid of the radiation and everything, but that's where they put them in. Well, things happen, and then in the meantime, Batman uncovers what Luthor is doing to Billy and what his ultimate plan is, and puts a stop to him. But yeah. Billy finally, because of the worms and because of the psychosis and everything, he finally he can't break out of it, and he freaks out, and he finally says the word Shazam, because Captain Marvel couldn't live in this world either, so he said the word the last time and never came back out.
That's right.
And Luthor took advantage of Billy Batson, and now he's a stew of psychosis, and he doesn't know what to believe. He doesn't know what's right, what's wrong, but he's going to put a stop to it, I guess.
Yep.
So he flies there, and he busts open the prison.
Yeah, that's right.
And Superman could probably rein all this in, but he can't because Captain Marvel is the one fighting him. It's the one guy in the world that can keep Superman at bay.
Well, just to go back a little bit, Superman doesn't know that Billy Batson or Shazam are involved in this. It's only because Batman uncovers because he infiltrated Lex Luthor's.
Right. He had no idea.
And this takes me to the most lovely illustration. I'll have to find it for you. Is where Superman finds out and he leaves the Justice League headquarters to fly to Batman to say to Batman, I need your help. And rather, because he hasn't got the time to go across the earth, he smashes into Japan and comes up through the Batcave, where he's just gone straight through the center of the earth and come through.
Right.
That's just so good.
I think I can find it here. He's like, I got maybe a few seconds, and then this is all gonna go to hell.
Yeah, and it's there that when Bruce Wayne says to him, Shazam, Billy Batson is the hidden ingredient or something. I can't remember what he calls him. Where is it?
I got it here.
Got it?
So
so
he comes through, and this is the Gulag's ready to blow. He says, yeah, even as we speak, Wonder Woman and the League stand outside its walls, ready to bring it down. So Wonder Woman, she's gone full warrior mode, She's ready to. She's gotten to the point that she's ready to kill these people because they won't follow Superman. She's starting to see Superman as weak.
And she's a little desperate as well, Yoda, because don't forget she's been exiled herself. So because of her mission has failed, so she's pissed off as well.
Yeah, her mission was to make the world a better place, and that her sisters feel like she didn't do that.
That's it.
And so, and at one point, what really illustrates where Superman is versus where Wonder Woman is when the Gulag starts having the riots, well before they start having the before Shazam breaks it open, it becomes all out war. They start having the riots. She says, "All right, we gotta get down there. We gotta prepare." And he's like, "Look, we gotta try to calm this down. We gotta try and talk to him." She goes, "This is war." He goes, "You can't have war without people dying." And she just looks at him like, she just realizes in that moment, it's like he's incredibly naive.
Yeah, she kisses him, doesn't she, before she leaves? And Norman
and realizes that, and now she's gone full Magog at that point.
Yes, she's gone to the other side now.
And Superman still has this belief that you can do all this without the loss of life. So it breaks open. There's a giant war. I remember this is happening in Kansas, right?
Right.
And there's the UN is sitting there, the American representative of the UN. He goes, what are we going to do about this? I can hear them from here. They're in New York, right? That's how bad this is.
Yeah.
It's far flung across. Well, I mean, the internet, you can do something here and screw up somebody in Indonesia, right?
Yeah.
Or Indonesia can have all sorts of problems that take away people's money in the United States. It's all, I just keep seeing these connections that probably didn't exist back then, just because of the power of the internet and information, what power that is. So he tells Batman gathers his crew and flies in with his armored bat suit and everything to help Wonder Woman to try to stem the tide, to try to stem the loss of life as Superman would. Superman's being completely decimated by Shazam. Shazam keeps hammering him with the magic lightning bolts and that.
That's right.
And the humans, the governments decide enough is enough. Had it with these people. We are no longer in control of our own planet. We are no longer in control of our own destinies. And we are going to take control of our own destinies. And they fire 3 nukes.
3 nukes, that's it.
Very powerful ones, I guess. And so Superman, they even have a nice little moment. It's like, well, why does Superman just hit it with his heat vision? He tries and it bounces off the
they've covered all their bases. Yeah, they've covered all their bases.
That little attention to detail, that little question that would be asked in a CinemaSins video or something, right? They covered it.
Yeah.
And he can't get away from Shazam. Shazam is just as powerful as he is. And he's always susceptible to magic. And finally, he's able to, when he pulls in the lightning, he's able to pull Billy into the lightning, or Captain Marvel into the lightning, and change him back to Billy, and then put his hand across his mouth.
As Billy's, once Billy's back to being a human being, he covers his hand,
And he says, Billy, I don't know what to do. He literally just says, I don't know what to do. I got 3 nukes coming in. If they come in, they will kill us all.
I think 2 have been destroyed by then, haven't they?
He doesn't know that.
Oh, okay, right, okay.
And even if he does it, the one's still coming in. So
there's still one heading straight for them,
Wonder Woman and Batman have an argument, and then they see the 2, and they realize we need to either destroy them or let them do their work. There's no right answer here, which is what I love about it.
Yeah, it's great.
And Superman says, I don't know what to do. I could let the nuke come in and finish the job, or I could stop it and we will overrun the planet. Those are the only 2 choices that he sees. But he flies up to start to take it, and Billy calls the magic lightning down, and he flies up, and he pulls Superman down. Superman manages to grab his cape off of Billy, or off of Captain Marvel.
You've missed a bit, Yoda. Let me stop you, because the reason he's saying this to Billy is because Billy's lived in both worlds. He's lived as a human being and he's lived as a god. And Superman says, you are literally the only person on Earth that can make this decision. Who do we save? So
and he does.
Sorry, mate.
And he makes a decision. He calls the magic lightning down to detonate the nuke, but well above ground zero.
Yes.
So tons of these beings are killed, but many of them are saved either through Green Lantern's shield and whatever. Superman doesn't know this.
No.
And he flies over to the
he thinks he's the only one left, doesn't he?
He thinks it's the only one left.
Shazam's dead. As he held onto the nuke, he said Shazam 3 times. So he went human, Captain Marvel, and then back to human. So it's the final human form that obliterated.
Maybe.
Yeah.
I hadn't thought about that. That makes sense. So he's in the UN. Superman's now in the UN. He's about ready to his eyes are glowing. He feels a rage.
He's lost it.
Yeah. And now one thing we didn't really mention throughout this entire story, Norman McKay, the preacher, is with the Spectre. Yep. And he's now got the visions that I talked about from the very beginning that Sandman has. And he's following through as bearing witness. But he's like a ghost. He's not. They don't see him.
No.
At one point, I think the Flash pulls him out of phase because Flash is that weird.
Does. Because his Flash is now so fast that he can't be stationary. He's flipping in and out, constantly flipping out of different dimensions. And yeah, you're right. There's that lovely scene where Flash is in the background, and you see him for a split second just stop and look.
He notices McKay, even though nobody else can see him because he's in the spirit realm or whatever he is. And so they go through this, and McKay he just looks like just a normal old dude, He's so unassuming.
Just a priest.
It's really cool.
Yeah.
Just a priest or a pastor.
Can I just say something? I think that's actually Alex was his dad.
I think it is, yeah.
I think it's his dad.
It's so beautiful. And so now that Superman is about ready to tear down the UN, and Spectre says judgment has been passed, there's nothing more for us to do, McKay's like, bullshit, you take me to him and let me talk to him. Let me talk to Superman. I've witnessed this whole thing. I've got to be able to do something. So he talks to Superman because he knows that Superman isn't really mad at the UN.
Well, he's gone, isn't he? He's bringing the building down.
Right.
He's welded all the doors. Yeah, he's welded all the doors shut so no one can get out. And I think the Spectre actually says to Norman, he's unleashed an anger that would make Satan cower. Mm-hmm. And you're like, oh, that's smooth.
And he's like, well, he's not mad at these people. He's mad at himself. He's mad at his failure. He's mad at once again, he was unable to stop the loss of life and make the right decision, and that it's come to this. And so he talks Superman down, says, they'll never forgive you for this, but you could forgive yourself. And that's when that's when the others that survived, mostly the Green Lantern, Wonder Woman, Batman, the big ones, and then a few of the kids.
Yeah.
Enough, he says, that we have the same problems that we had before. We didn't really solve a problem here. We just had a big wake-up call. And it could have been so much worse. We could have had much more loss of life for the superhero. We could have had much more life for the humans. And if we don't figure this out, there's no easy answer at the end of this. But what he does say is that we are not going to live above you anymore. We're going to live among you. We're going to have the same vote that you do on committees and on governing bodies. We're going to work within the system, but we're all going to resolve to be a part of the same system, that the laws will apply equally to everybody, that the processes will apply equally to everybody, and that we will all work together, and we will have conflict and we will have disagreements, but we will use the processes that have been in place that we had before to make sure that we're going to win some, we're going to lose some, but we're all going to work together and we're not going to see each other as enemies. And there's this beautiful moment where all the superheroes, they all take their masks off, which I love. They all take their masks off and say, we are going to be human. You got Green Lantern, he's been sitting waiting for space threats in this big green citadel above the earth.
That's right.
For decades. He comes down and now he's sitting on a committee in a suit. And the only thing you can tell these Green Lanterns, he's still got his ring on, but that's about it. No mask, no big green armor or anything. He's sitting on a committee trying to do the right thing. He still has his powers and he'll use them when necessary, but he won't use them arbitrarily. None of these guys will use their powers arbitrarily anymore.
Yeah, they're not vigilantes anymore.
No. And the humans will work with these people and everybody will work together. They won't be sending off nuke bombs at anybody anymore, you know. Yeah. And I it feels like, a new age is dawning that, yes, we're going to have problems. We're always going to have problems. But we're not going to see each other as the enemy anymore. And that's the message I kind of take from it. It's like, I wish we could get to that point, and I hope it doesn't take a nuclear bomb to get us there. Because that's where we're at now. It's like we all see each other as enemies.
Yep.
We don't want to understand that the other person has a point of view that maybe you ought to listen to. And some people are just completely effing wrong.
Yep.
And some people are completely right. And some people are in between. But we all got to listen, and the people that are wrong, maybe they'll hear something that maybe will change their view, and the people that are right, maybe they'll hear something why the people are so angry, and we can get somewhere. But I that's the story, and then you add into it all Alex Ross's art and some really impeccable writing with it.
Oh, it's incredible.
And I feel like sometimes that Kingdom Come is a well-regarded story, but I feel like it sometimes is overshadowed by things like Dark Knight Rises, The Killing Joke, Watchmen, a few others, The Dark Knight Returns, I mean, and a couple of other that seem to get all the glory sometimes, or they seem to get all the attention. And Kingdom Come feels like one of those that's a little under the radar. I'm not saying that it's forgotten or that nobody remembers it. People definitely well regard this, but it doesn't have that level that I would say a Watchmen does for some reason.
Yeah, it doesn't get. Yeah, for some reason it doesn't sort of get the publicity that Watchmen does. And for me, I think it's. I know it's. Nah, I was gonna say it's better than Watchmen, but you can't compare the both. That's stupid.
Well, I actually do. I prefer it to Watchmen or Dark Knight Returns or some of these others.
I prefer it.
And the reason being is that as dark and as awful as it gets, it comes away with such an optimistic message of hope, which I tend to gravitate towards. I like I know Sean and Boba, they love these nihilistic grindhouse movies, and God bless them for it. I mean, I don't think that people like what they like. I'm not trying to drag them for it. But I'm always drawn to something that gives me a message of optimism and hope moving forward. It's why I've always liked Superman better than Batman. And I love Batman. Don't get me wrong. I do love Batman. But the Superman movies were so sunny. Even though Lex Luthor nuked California. It's still a very sunny movie in a lot of ways. Yeah. And that's what Superman always represented to me, was this the best that humanity can offer. And I always want to see the best in people, so I'm just kind of like that. And I know that like Superman, I'm probably naive on some of this kind of stuff, but that I don't understand how people can be as awful as they can be. But that's just, that's what makes life interesting, is that we all have these different points of view, right?
Yeah, so, I understand. I'm a little bit torn because I'm I'm always an optimist like Superman, which is why Superman shit everywhere. But there's also
because I'm wearing my Batman shirt.
Yeah, I've actually got my Kingdom Come one on today.
Yeah, which is black in the Superman symbol. It's very symbolic, very dark. It
is good. So I am an optimist, and I do try to see the best in people, and I do try and think of a better outcome. But I also I can relate to Batman more as I'm probably getting older. I think more cynical. I think the world itself is unjust, and you kind of think, is there a Superman point of view? So we're heading down the Batman path. Let's be honest.
Well, here's the weird thing about Batman. Batman may be. People always say, "Well, he's so dark and gritty, and he rules by fear and all this kind of stuff." It's like, yeah, but he doesn't kill. All the times he can kill the Joker and he doesn't, there's this part of him that believes that there's this part of him that always believes that there is hope, that somebody can be redeemed. And there's a lot of great stories where he works with the redeemed ones. Like he really wants that, I believe. That's something like a Punisher or Wolverine doesn't have.
You see, I find Batman selfish when it comes to the Joker. Because I think the amount of lives that the Joker's killed and maimed.
I know.
It could have been put out of his way. That's right. When I first
from a
read
realistic point of view, you are correct. But from a philosophical point of view, can humanity be? Can anybody be redeemed? Batman has that, just like Superman. That's the one thing I think they have in common. And remember, we're talking about stories and allegories here. We're not talking about real life.
So I think Batman's wrong. I think they're both wrong. I don't think some people can be redeemed. And in fact, when I first read Kingdom Come and Magog killed the Joker, I actually went, yes, finally, fine. So I was actually on the side of the public in the comic. It was like, finally, someone's actually said. So.
And the story shows that you were wrong.
Yeah.
I mean, technically, right? I mean, that's the point, right?
Yeah.
It's like, yes, in this, if you could do here's the thing that I think really comes across to me in this story is that these decisions are not made in a vacuum. No matter how hard, no matter what, this is what the left does not understand. I've seen it a million times. We can have all this horrible sexual stuff and it won't affect the kids. We can change the culture and it won't affect the culture negatively because of this one thing. They believe that. That's not how it works.
No.
What do you care whether two gay people get married? Well, I don't. I don't. But you're tearing down, you could have done civil unions or things like that, giving them all the legal stuff, all the practical stuff. But what you're saying is that marriage is no longer an institution. You're tearing down a cultural foundation, touchstone, that has kept families and society together for hundreds, maybe thousands of years.
Yeah.
And pretending that doesn't affect the culture in negative ways. This is what Kingdom Come, I think, is trying to say. It's like, sure, you could kill the Joker. But that begat Superman leaving. And that begat all the stuff that happened afterwards. And then ended up in the culmination of Kansas being wiped out.
Mm-hmm.
Now, am I saying that that's what's going to happen, that we're going to nuke Kansas? No, of course not. It's an allegory. It's symbolism. But you can look at the things that have happened in the past where we kind of argue these things as if they were small things without understanding that they have changed the culture and not for the better. And now we have a whole new group of kids who are wielding information and data and protests and things without understanding why these things are in place or how dangerous they are, to just tear down everything without understanding why they're there in the first place.
Well, it's the snowball effect,
that's the message.
Yoda.
What's that?
It's the snowball effect, mate, isn't it?
It is.
These little arguments, these little differences, and they just grow and grow, and more people get involved, and then you end up into, well, hopefully in real life we won't, but in Kingdom Come, they end up to the ultimate, there's no right answer to this. One side has to suffer.
Well, the one right answer is we need to put aside one is to put aside a need for power. That's for certain.
Yeah.
Because the one people that were punished in this were the establishment, the Luthor faction, who were in it for themselves. They were the ones that were truly punished.
Yes, because Bruce Wayne converts Wayne Manor into a massive hospital to repair all the superheroes have been damaged and the people and folks, and then he's forced people, not forced, I think they've got like a neck inhibitor, like Lex Luthor, and they're being forced to help. Yeah.
The climax, or the epilogue to the story, I should say, is there is the one thing that's I found kind of interesting was the Planet Hollywood style, Hard Rock Cafe style restaurant where everybody's dressed as the superheroes of old, and it's clear that to me that's where humanity is like the normies are like just not taking these people seriously anymore, or have disdain for them, or treat them like jokes. Right.
I think it's treating them like, I think you're right. They're treating them like jokes thing. And what's nice about that as well, Yoda, is the fact that Superman is clearly disturbed by the whole thing, maybe to a point of where he's a little embarrassed.
Yeah.
As Batman just treats you with absolute contempt and disdain. It's like such a lovely contrast.
But Wonder Woman says, no, I think it's good. I think it humbles us.
Yeah.
So, you got those three.
We got the Trinity. The
Trinity. Yeah. And so they meet at one of these places, and Batman successfully deduces how he does this. This is because he's Batman. Deduces that Wonder Woman is pregnant with Superman's kid. Superman and Wonder Woman have become an item. They get married, I think. I don't know. And so what he didn't see coming was that Wonder Woman and, well, really Wonder Woman.
Just Wonder Woman.
Clark is like, what? But she says, we want you to be the godfather. And we want you to teach the kid things that we can't. Mm-hmm. We want us all to work together because Batman is the human, Wonder Woman is the god, and Superman is the innocent paragon with powers beyond both of them.
He's like the god who's trying to be human but can't quite get there. Yeah. And
all of them have different perspectives on life, and they believe that Batman's perspective is also valuable, and that it's kind of a symbol of that we're all going to work together from the previous pages. One of the things I liked also, and this is kind of a little bit of a side, but that after all is done, after they've all decided to work together, we saw Green Lantern, like I said, on a board, and we see Batman creating the hospital and things like that. Superman's got a giant plow. He's been getting rid of the radiation Kansas, and he's trying to create food again. And Wonder Woman visits him, and she says, it's great to see us all working together. It's great to see you kind of embrace. He's not wearing the super suit anymore. It's just that kind of thing. And she says, I wanted to give you something. He says, what? And she gives him a pair of glasses, which kind of is the symbol of Superman's humanity.
It's
a symbol. It's a symbol of disability, really. Which being human would be a disability to Superman, and he willingly puts it on, saying, "I'm going to be less super and more human." Forward. It's beautiful. Oh, it's just beautiful.
Chef's kiss. He embraces the humanity side of him, even though he's not human. But obviously, his parents are very much human.
Right.
So it was nice by putting the glasses, he embraces, because right at the very beginning, when Wonder Woman first comes to him and he's in exile, she calls him Clark, and then there's the shot, and he just stares at her, like glares at her. She then changes it, calls him Cal. Where he's lost
they have to
that
keep
sense
calling
of
him
humanity.
Cal.
Yeah,
and
so he's lost that sense of humanity, and then it ends with him gaining it back again. So it's just
if you'll notice in the Hard Rock, they're calling him Clark again.
Yeah,
and he's accepting it, and he's wearing the glasses. So. It's all very well done, and it's more prescient now than it was even back then. So that's Kingdom Come. I'm I want to say it's probably my favorite graphic novel,
Oh, yeah,
and
without a doubt.
I think it's the one that reignited. Like I had kind of here and there looking at some DC stuff. I had bought the 3 graphic novels on the death of Superman, World Without a
Yeah.
Superman, and Superman Returns, and I thought those were fun. But it was that graphic novel that really kind of, because there were so many cameos and so many odd characters in it, and really got me
The
back
attention
into
to
DC
detail.
lore.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly the same.
And then when you successfully grafted onto the Book of Revelations, because they have those Bible verses sprinkled out throughout it. I don't know. I mean, it's interesting how much the Bible is allegory. It's interesting how much these stories, if done right, can be allegory for our times. And that's what's so disappointing about today's stuff is that they don't understand any of what came before, and they're just it's IP content to put in people's faces as if it has any lasting or real meaning. Nobody's going to be talking about Lord of the Rings or, quite frankly, any of the MCU Phase 4 in 25 years like we're talking about Kingdom Come.
It's a good point. Never thought of it like that. They are just doing stuff rather than
Yeah.
respecting past. Yeah.
It's all very short term. It's all the Lex Luthors of the world that are enriching themselves that are in charge of this stuff, and that's and the people that are writing it are the wacko kids of the superheroes before them, the people that used to really understand writing and all that kind of stuff, who are just basically I'm right and they're wrong, and I'm gonna put my superpowers of righteousness into my stories, which is no superpower at all. It's just destruction. And that's what's happening. I mean, all of this is happening within this story. It's just if you could see those areas. That's just how I've been seeing it.
So to link it all up then, obviously the reason we're talking about this was because James Gunn keeps teasing the Kingdom Come imagery and everything else. So with James Gunn obviously taking over DC, do you think that he's going to attempt to do the Kingdom Come? Because he's been teasing it on social media, changing his headline, his profile image, taking this image and saying we're making plans. He said he's got a 10-year story arc for DC planned out. As we said on the live stream a few weeks back, obviously Henry Cavill is going to be nearly 50, Affleck's going to be in his 60s, Momoa's going to be in his mid-50s, blah, blah, blah. So the timing, if they can get it right over the next 10 years, do you think he's going to do this? I mean, it's a massive undertaking.
I don't know. I mean, like Momoa, Aquaman in this was not really relevant. He was there because he says, I'm just taking care of Under the Sea, and you guys.
I was going to say, yeah, he kind of dismisses it, doesn't he?
Yeah. They try to use Apocalypse as a prison, and they have a very interesting moment with Orion, who at this point Darkseid is dead and gone. Orion has taken over Apocalypse, and he's under the realization that change can be just as destructive as trying to make things for the better can lead to absolute destruction. He tried to change Apocalypse. The people didn't want it. They like being bootlickers or whatever the reason, but he wasn't able to affect the kind of change that he thought he could because some people just don't accept it. That was an interesting moment in that story. So I don't know. I mean, it came at a time where DC history was where it was, DC canon was where it was, and so this perfectly. I mean, Superman still has the ponytail, which he had the long hair in the '90s. So that's partly why he looks like that.
Actually, that's the worst bit about this comic.
Yeah.
Superman with a ponytail.
It's pretty bad, but it's kind of one of those things that I just. Maybe I'm not going to put it past Gunn to not do it. I really shudder because there's very, very little humor in this, and what it is very situational. It's not quippy. There is some humor in it, but it's not it's very subtle and low key,
Delicate.
and this is a serious story told by serious people. And while Gunn can do some good stuff, I'm probably one of the few that think Volume 2 of Guardians of the Galaxy is much better than Volume 1 because of the father storylines and the ending and how it all came together. Whereas the first one ended with a dance-off with a villain that nobody cared about. I mean, I love the first one. It brought together the team very well, and it was kind of a revelation at the time. I don't want to drag the first one, but the second one I think went into so much more character depth with the father and the son allegories and all that kind of stuff. And I thought it was a lot, I mean, it ended with a raccoon crying, and I'm like, oh, this is fantastic.
Yeah.
And I don't know why it's not as well thought of as it is, or why everybody kind of craps on it. I don't understand, because it just emotionally, I think it goes much deeper than the first one ever did.
So Gunn's got it in him to do something.
That's what I'm saying. Yeah, Gunn's got it in him. It's just, does the DCEU, is it able to conform to this sort of thing? I mean, the problem is that the whole thing is predicated on the idea that Superman won't kill, and yet we've seen that Superman will kill just fine. And Superman's supposed to be all about keeping, innocents out of harm's way.
That's canon. What? He does kill Zod in the comics. It is canon.
Yeah, but Superman in the DCEU, I mean, I know you love Man of Steel, but the amount of destruction that happens in that shouldn't have happened, or that in my mind, Superman should be doing much more to try to stem, is really awful. There's a scene, the scene that exemplifies it to me is that Zod pushes a tanker truck at him, and Superman just lazily goes over the tanker truck and then snaps like, you missed me. Meanwhile, a tanker truck goes into the building behind it, explodes, the building collapses, and he's just standing there going, look, I'm posing in front of all this. Isn't that great? I'm like, what the fuck are you doing? Stop the tanker truck. That's what Christopher Reeve would have done.
Yeah, this is a whole new conversation, man.
Well, like when Nan and Ursa threw the bus, and Reeve is just frantic. He said, those people, you can't do that. That's Superman to me. And that's the Superman that was that's the Superman that was in Kingdom Come. Yeah. It's not the Superman that's in the DCEU, and that's why I don't think it'll work quite as well.
I'm just really worried.
Maybe. I just worry about the DCEU trying to graft something or adapt a story because it was cool, and they don't understand why the story is what it is. And I don't know if they're
ready. They're not ready for Kingdom Come.
They're definitely not ready now.
I think 20 years, 10's, because we've got to introduce all these other side characters a lot of people won't know about as well, to give you this massive,
if they did
final.
If they did it as a complete one-off, not connected to the DCEU at all, recast everybody, and did it, as close as you could, I'd be okay with that. But if they try to do it within the canon of the DCEU, I just don't see it having the same depth or weight that the original story does.
Well, I don't know. Perhaps Flashpoint is going to have a big say in this, or The Flash, because that's set to reset things. I mean, they were talking about obviously resetting Man of Steel through that. So
I hope it resets the actor. I hope it resets the actor playing Flash.
All I will say is that, because I know James Gunn will be watching this, just be respectful, man. Just be respectful.
So, thank you for listening to me ramble on and on and on about Kingdom Come and watching Eggy just stare at me blankly the whole time. I appreciate that.
I was enjoying it.
I hope so. It is that's why I wanted to talk to you about it, because I knew you liked it, and it's a story, obviously, that's near and dear to my heart. I have a lot of respect and admiration for it, and I hope that you guys give it a read or go find it and give it a read and maybe see some of the things that I have. And if nothing else, just enjoy the beautiful Alex Ross artistry in it. It's just absolutely gorgeous. So, any last words from you?
No, it's been a pleasure.
Thank you very much for watching. And keep in mind, we are lastmovieoutpost.com. You can find us for all the latest in movie news, streaming news, and everything good about film. I have been Drunken Yoda. He has been Matt. He's still Matt. And I keep wanting to revert to your screen name. But you know
I know.
And so please, if you like this video, like, share, and subscribe. And if you have anything else you'd like us to talk about, just drop us a comment down below. And remember, we have streaming every Sunday at noon Central Time, 6 o'clock UK time. And I think that's it. So thank you very much for watching, and we'll see you on the next stream.